Alright, greetings. This is kind of a follow-on to the QuickFire Charlie Delta trading video I did a couple days ago. And I wanted to be careful about how tangentially I went out in that video. It was an hour and 45 minutes as it was, and I was trying to keep it short. But there's just some pieces that, well, if I teach this, I got to teach this, and if I do that, I got to mention this. And I'm just that kind of guy. I'm not going to put out a video that's 20 minutes, keep it to 4 steps just so I could keep it to 20 minutes. Because that does the trader no good. I might, oh yeah, he could produce a quick video, but how useful is it? How successful that will make traders? So this is something that is I'm doing to kind of review, and at the same time I'm just going to be honest with you guys, because I'm here to make you successful traders. And for those of you that are stubborn, for those of you that have massive ego that you're aware of, because you're always a maverick and a rebellious type. For those of you who have ego and you don't know about it because you're over nurtured by your ego, you're over protected by your ego, I'm going to say some things in this video that may get some traders a little butt hurt. And I'm sorry about that if that happens. My intentions are good. I'm not out to hurt anybody, but I just, I have to cover the grounds of what it takes to be a trader. And so some of this comes a result of some questions that I've been seeing flying around in the group regarding divergence in terms of QuickFire. Okay, so we know in the QuickFire setup and discussing it in the training video the other day, and what you've maybe seen from QuickFire elsewhere, what I described as QuickFire Basic is requiring a harmonic scan and then 5 Bollinger Bands, and I specify which ones, relative strength, and I specify which one, and a MACD, which we referred to as the 310 oscillator. And I even referenced the book that Christopher Terry references when he's talked about the 310 oscillator as MACD in some of his training videos in the IML Academy. So there's the setup that was given in training. And then we go ahead and say, well, if that's the setup, here's the criteria. And the third one is there divergence between price and MACD? And then we go ahead and show, in terms of MACD, the divergence that we're talking about and what that looked like. Okay. I further went on to show a chart of divergence and referenced the traditional reversal divergence versus the hidden continuation divergence, and that divergence is actually divided into 3 classes, and that class A is all we needed to see. That's why I shaded out this. I could have cut this out and just given the top part, but I want to make you a complete trader. I want you to know there's more to it, and right now this is all we need. That doesn't mean someday you're not going to want to go down and Google this and visit this stuff. But right now, this is what we need for Charlie Delta and QuickFire. So the very first IML TV presentation that I did, I know some of you have not seen it because it's rolled off of the recordings. So I'm going to bring it back for just a second and talk about this. This is the very first slide, other than a welcome slide and a bio on me. This is the very first slide I put up in IML TV. And it has to do with what I've witnessed over, my years as an educator in terms of the Forex. And I listed the attributes of successful traders. So in other words, you don't have to be some brilliant guy. You don't have to go out and commission a study. If you have a large enough sampling, and my sampling is well over 10,000 traders, that all you have to do is look at the successful ones and see their attributes. Tony Robbins talks about, success leaves patterns. Well, failure does too. And so what I've seen over the years is these are the attributes that successful traders have. And when I looked at the groupings of failed traders, traders that could never make it, they were absent these attributes. So you can take that as you will, but essentially if you look at this list, and this is a partial list, but this is kind of a quick off the top of the head list, and it wasn't placed in alphabetical order or order of importance, it was just a stream consciousness. I thought and my fingers typed. But this is a good darn good starting place. And if you don't have these, then you have to make some decision. This isn't a multiple choice thing. It's not multiple choice. If you're going to end up in the small group of successful traders, these are the attributes you have to have. Now, guess what? Do any of us have all these attributes when we start learning to trade? Absolutely not. And this is why self-development and self-growth is so significant. You have to grow into possessing these attributes. And this will lead to success in anything. This was slanted towards being a Forex trader, but the same kind of growth is necessary to be successful in any endeavor. Be it through self-development, be it through videos, be it through, audible CDs, be it through whatever. So you have to grow yourself. And, this was a pretty big list, Oh, you have to have a big dream and a purpose. You have to buy into the dream. Failure is not an option. Persist until success happens. You have to have that belief has to be inevitable that the dream will happen. You have to have a plan. You have to be able to focus. You have to have the capital to make that dream come true. You have to have momentum and a sense of urgency. You have to have frequency and consistency and effort. You have to have ongoing training and study, on and on and on. In terms of ongoing training and study, if somebody puts out a video, you need to go through that video several times. Not just once and got it. Not just once and try and proceed. Go back and make sure. Here's how many, somebody says, how many times should I watch the video? I say until you get to the point where you watch it again and you can't take another note because you already got it all down. That's when you're done watching that video. You have to be disciplined. You have to be a self-development fanatic. Bobo, that's a Grant Cardone thing, Be obsessed or be average. It's going to be one or the other. You have to have a deserving mindset. You have to be optimistic versus pessimistic. You have to be an opportunist. An opportunist does what? They take whatever they're given and make it work. That same MacGyver-like abilities and confidence. Oh, I just don't know how to do this. Fine, let the bomb blow up and you die. You've got to find a way. You've got to be part explorer and researcher. You've got to be self-challenging. You have to have that entrepreneurial mindset. You have to be able to separate yourself from ego. Be selfless. You have to be coachable. You have to understand math. You embrace it. You seek it out. You have to be able to do some manual stuff in a spreadsheet or have a paid assistant by your side all the time so you can tell him or her what to do in the Excel spreadsheet. I recommend you learn how to use Excel. You have to have some common sense. That means logic over emotion. Emotion, many forms of emotion. There's fear, greed, frustration, disappointment. See, that stuff comes because you don't have the logic down. Most of the logic comes from math, but sometimes it's just common sense. The head game has to be in place. That whole triad that I talked about in the QuickFire Charlie Delta training. That triad of RAS, law of attraction, and ego. You have to have patience. Knows what they are trading, why you're trading it. KSP, knowledge of system performance and what it is you trade. You have to demo trade until you know what that system is going to do. Got traders that are looking at a system and they're starting to play with it and they say, Steve, how long is it going to be before I can make X amount of money? And I'm like, well, first of all, you should be able to know that. What? I'm just new. I've only been at it 6 months. How do you expect me to know stuff like that? Because you shouldn't be going live until you have knowledge of system performance. Knowledge of system performance knows, gee, if I take 10 trades, I'm going to win 8 of them. And I've seen that routinely. This is why, in my group, my advanced traders group, I divide people by color levels, and the first one's green. And at green, I say take 100 trades. And at bronze, they're going to take 100 trades. And at silver, they're going to take 100 trades. And at gold, they're going to take 100 trades. And at platinum, they're going to take 100 trades. And then they're going to start to know the system performance. If you're trading live and you don't know what the system you're trading already performs at, then you haven't demo traded enough. You have to have that knowledge of system performance. It's going to depend on your individual risk aversion. You have to understand true risk reward. Trade selectivity, trade money management. You can't have vengeance and have, you have to have revenge mastered in your trading. You have to look forward and not backwards. So this, I could go on for hours on each one of those things. But here's the deal. You need to do a little self checklist against that list to make sure you know what you're doing. I came here to see divergence. What does this have to do with that, Steve? See, once again, you're looking for the technical, overlooking the 85, 90%. That's really going to drive your success. You need to get that through your head. Every time you hear yourself going, I wish you'd just get to the technical stuff, you're not going to make it. I'm just going to outright tell you, you're not going to make it as a trader because you're giving zero credence to the fact that success and failure is going to be determined by your head game. And this is head game kind of stuff. So I got asked, and I saw floating around, there were some questions about divergence on the QuickFire system. And so I'm thinking about what was shown in that video. And again, not out to get anybody, but I'm just saying several people need to reflect on this. How many times did they watch the video? Could they actually take screenshots of 5-10 pages of notes from that video that they took? Can they show me references to, at 10 minutes and 24 seconds, Steve talked about this, and there it is in their notes, what I was talking about. So, and they have that reference, so they could go back to that part of the video and review it again if they have to, if they don't quite get something. That's when you studied enough. That's when you've done enough. You guys, as a group, and I'm not picking on everybody, but as a consensus, I'm saying this to you as a trader meaning plurality of everybody. You need to get it together. You need to stop being spoon-fed. You need to start taking what's given to you, connect the dots, and then be able to predict where the next dot's going to go. Instead of sitting there, fat, dumb, and happy saying, well, I just can't move forward until the next dot's given to me. Or asking where does the next dot go? Instead of experimenting some. Try it some. And then, when you can't figure it out, ask your questions. So the questions I was asked, or more so the questions I saw over the group in the last couple of days, has to do with the fact that you're not pushing. You're waiting for answers. Because all of the answers were already given to you in that video. And I'm about to show you. And then I'll introduce something new just to make my point. So, first of all, there's some confusion between people who have been on MT4 and are transitioning to TradingView. And you know what? I can appreciate some of that transition. I'll say this. I don't use MT4. And there's many reasons I don't, but one of the reasons is MT4 does things differently. Not always, but in many cases. And I know that because, for my long-term community called Pip Club, I've looked at many charting applications. And everybody does things a little bit differently. But if you talk about a particular indicator and, you go to 9 charting packages and they have 3 parameters for that indicator, and then you go to MT4 and they have 2, or you go to MT4 and they have 4, something's different. You can't expect the results to match when it's that different. And there are just too many times in the MT4 world when you start really getting deep and exploring things that, if you look at MT4 as part of the entire charting world, you'll see those nuances in MT4. And there are other issues which have to do with broker feeds, and any broker can get MT4, so you have some brokers out there that are just not very good with their data feeds, and as a result, the results you're going to get from one MT4 to another MT4 to another MT4 can be varied. So there has to be more standardization in what you see. Anyway, those are my personal reasons. But MT4, above and beyond a typical software package can have its points of confusion, especially for a newer trader. So where some of these questions I think are coming about are in the way MT4 does stuff. And if the first charting application you really looked at was MT4 and that's what you grew up with, then your paradigm is MT4 and you're going to see everything else in the world as strange as you try and transition to it. And I'm just here to say, if you were in any other charting application, you would see all the other charting applications as the same, and MT4 as the weird boy out on the side. But let's look at MT4 in terms of MACD for a second, because we're talking about divergence, and in the QuickFire setup, we talked about running MACD to talk about divergence and to measure divergence. And so those of you coming from MT4 have some questions about what is what. And again, I understand the nature of your question. The challenge is you had the answers in front of you. So let's look at this. So here's a setup in MT4. When you try and load MT4, you'll notice it asks you for a couple of things. And pay attention to what they're asking for. They're asking for a fast EMA. They're asking for a slow EMA. And then they're asking for what's called, in MT4 world, a MACD SMA. So here's our 3, 10, 16. And this is populated just as if you saw Christopher Terry in the harmonics videos. This is how he would tell you to populate it, 3, 10, 16. The challenge with MT4 is then when you go to put the, things like colors and the other attributes on it, these are the parameters. When you go to the colors tab, they bring up, some things that are just different. So all of a sudden we have main. Well, which one of these is labeled main? I don't know. Can you tell me which one's labeled main? But here's the colors. Well, I'm going to color main blue. Okay, and I'm going to cover the signal in red. Well, which one of these is the signal? Now, once you get MACD and once you put this on the chart and once somebody teaches you, well, you know. But imagine a new trader coming in here and they want to put a MACD on their chart and they hit the 3, 10, 16 and then they get this as their colors label and they say, what the heck? Why can't they use standard labeling? Why do they have to change the names of things in here? I don't know, but they do. Then what makes it interesting is when it plots, well, now you can start to see stuff. Okay, well, obviously the main is the histogram. To the newer trader, I still don't know if they know which one of these that is. And then their signal is colored red, which is this red line. Well, now I'm confused because they're giving me 3 variables and only plotting 2 of them. So, see, even in the world of MT4, to a newer trader, this could be a little confusing because there's just not a lot of common sense flow, in the indicator. Now, TradingView isn't a whole lot better. If we go to TradingView and we bring up a MACD, notice here we have the same fast and slow, but here it's called signal smoothing. There's no MACD even named here. We have fast, slow, and signal smoothing. Remember, in MT4, it was fast, slow, and MACD. So I guess by inference, you can say, I guess this signal smoothing is really MACD. But again, the terminology is different, but the order is the same, 3, 10, 16. And then again here, we come to the style parameter, and now it's a little bit just the same. All of a sudden, we have 3 things that can be colored. We had 3 parameters going in. One is called the histogram, and obviously they default that to a histogram. One is called the MACD, which, well, what is that versus the signal? So again, the terminology, I don't know why they just don't include the label here or use the same label, but nonetheless, there you go. And now, there you have it. So in the MACD, if you remember, there were a histogram that came out blue and 1 line running through it. We also know the size of the histogram. In Trader's View, when you put that on the chart, you get a little bit squished histogram. It's a little bit squished. And you can open it up some, but you look at it and you go, wait a second, that doesn't look anything like my MT4. So hence part of the confusion. Well, in reality, what MT4 is doing is they're essentially, putting the histogram on this one. And so the amplitude of it gets a little bigger. So I understand some confusion coming from MT4 to TradingView. Now, TradingView here I've shown is going to be the same for the most part, minus the ability to use simple MAs. This is going to be the same in the web scanner versus the TradingView subscription. But nonetheless, it's totally different than what you were used to seeing in MT4, when you got these big juicy amplitude based waves in the histogram. So you could play around with that. This is what, this is the MacGyver part. Change this up a little. There's only so many options. Make this a line and make this the histogram and see what it looks like. And since you're coming from the MT4 world, my gosh, go to a chart, pick a chart, the Euro USD 15-minute for the last day, put an MT4 MACD populated as 31016, and take a screenshot and put it off to the side or print it out or do what you have to do, and then come over to TradingView or the web scanner and do a 31016 scan. And on your TradingView, change the variables up, make one a line, make one a history. Do something until you get something that matches your MT4. Instead of being all in a hissy fit and, kind of don't get all discombobulated. You have the ability to experiment some. Try and figure it out on your own before sitting still going, oh gee, somebody help me. I'm so confused. Figure it out on your own. When you try and figure it out on your own and you get lost, that's a much different story. Now, I remember in the early days, well, not so early days, but the middle days of the PC software revolution, going into 2000, the whole dot-com rush and whatnot, back when everybody was putting out binders for their software, they used to call them the IBM software package. It was the same 5x8 binder in a box, and you can have them all lined up on your bookshelf in your office or whatever. And I remember when Microsoft had their first spreadsheet, it was called Multiplan, way before Excel. And, if you had a problem with Multiplan, you were trying to do something in one of the cells in that spreadsheet, and you opened the booklet and it said, here's customer support's number, and you called Microsoft, here's what you got at the other end. Good afternoon, this is Steve, Microsoft customer support, how can I help you? And you'd say, well, I'm trying to, as if they had charting software back then, which they didn't. Well, let's go to the spreadsheet. I'm trying to multiply one cell by another and have it be percents, and I'm having some problems with it. And you know what the customer reps would say from Microsoft? What page in the manual are you looking at? Whoops. You know why? Because 99% of the callers weren't looking at the manual that had the answer right there. They just wanted the easy way. Hey, Microsoft, tell me how to do it, versus looking it up. Now, if you looked it up and you were confused and you called and you said, I'm having trouble multiplying the cells, doing it in percentages, and they'd say, what page is the manual? And you say, well, I'm on page 129 where it's talking about multiplying cells, and I'm down here halfway. Okay, I see where you are. Now, let's go to 131. You just need to go a few pages further and it'll explain itself. Oh, okay, I see it. Thank you. But to call Microsoft and expect them to help you when you haven't even done anything to help yourself, they've got too many other things to do than answer your particular question like you're the center of the universe. Now, that might seem a little harsh in the way I'm repeating it and the tone I'm using, but I'll go back to that slide that said here's the attributes of what it's going to take to be a successful trader. So you have to understand it's as if you're the last man on earth. The Forex still exists and you're still going to get paid money and you still need money, but you're on your own. And you have to say, well, see, this is the place an entrepreneur finds himself. That's why it said you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset. You can't take on the mindset of, I will sit and wait for a third party to figure out my future success for me. You have to own your success. You have to own it. And you own that by being curious, by being logical, by being exploring, by being adventurous, by, being MacGyver. I've got to get myself out of the situation. There's nobody else here to help. MacGyver isn't sitting there with the nuclear bomb counting down 13 seconds and he's got 10 wires to choose from. Well, my cell phone doesn't work. I can't call anybody for help. I guess we just blow up. Now, the good thing is you do have some help available, but guys, come on. Put some work into it. Don't use, I'm brand new at trading, I don't know what to do. Because in the case of some of these questions that I see floating around, the answer was already here in the video you were given. I understand the premise. I've just shown you how sympathetic I am, because the way these indicators work on both charts is not easy to understand, right? It's not easy to understand. And again, when we move forward, then there we have it. And again, if I look at now this is on TradingView, but this MACD is set at 310.16. Amplitude here isn't too bad, but the MACD is going to be out there. And here, I'll tell you exactly where the MACD histogram is going to be. Can anybody guess where the MACD histogram might be? It's going to be here, because that's what they base their histogram off of. So it's going to have a little bit more amplitude most of the time than the 310.16 as default will show up in TradingView. Well, which is right? Plot them both out and see. Now, I said the answer was right here in front of you. Let's go back real quick to that chart of all the variables. Now I've highlighted if you got to have some focus. You got to do the training and the study. I've already referenced in regards to the video. You need to go back to it a couple of times. You should be able to go to your notebook of the video and find the answer. If you can't, it's because you didn't take good notes of the video. You have to have that MacGyver-like abilities and confidence. You have to be that explorer and researcher. You have to have the entrepreneur mindset. You have to be self-challenging. You have to be able to use a little common sense. Let's go back to the training. On the screen for QuickFire Basic, for the third question, is there divergence between MACD price and MACD? Note it says alternatively RSI. Oh, wait a second. Would that possibly suggest that if I can't figure out how to use divergence on a MACD that I could use RSI? That's exactly what it means. Some of the questions were, are you using the plots or the histogram to do divergence? I don't know. Let's look at the training. Gee, the training showed the histogram. I wonder if it should be the moving average plot or if it should be the histogram. Well, go back to your training. It was the histogram. Here's the shot from the training where we talk about divergence reversal and divergence, hidden divergence for continuation. And in fact, I took this little block here and superimposed it on this chart here, because in this chart, price was moving up, divergence was moving, or MACD was moving down, and that's the exact same we had here, and we understand that's bearish divergence, which means price is going to drive south, just as the arrow shows in this diagram. So from up here, we're expecting price to come down. That's why this is bearish divergence. It's opening up like a big funnel. So not only do you get that, but then I even made reference to this down here. And I said the reason you could use RSI alternatively is because divergence shows up in these three indicators extremely well. Stochastics with an 833 setting, MACD as the 310.16 oscillator, and RSI 14. Now, when I said common sense, remember, a trader has to have some common sense. What does this suggest? Do you think you can actually go to a chart, find divergence in MACD, and you're not going to see it in RSI? Well, then this wouldn't be a good tool for measuring divergence. Do you think if you put stochastics 833 on a chart and you saw divergence in MACD that you're not going to see it in stochastics, or vice versa? You're not going to see it in the MACD, but you'll see it in the stochastics? If all three of these are going to be good for divergence, guys, then all three of them should show the same thing at the same time. It's not going to be multiple choice. It wouldn't be a good tool for measuring divergence then. See, this information was already on your charts. And I went as far as to say that Jed, in his harmonics training, prefers to use RSI. And that Michael used MACD for one reason, because Chris Terry talks about it in harmonics, and he had 310.16 oscillator on his chart. That doesn't mean it's the only thing that works. I put it in the training because that's the basic way that Michael showed me QuickFire. But there it was right there on your charts. Divergence. You can use stochastics, MACD, 310, and even RSI. And if you even look at what's shown there, see these are double lines? Do you know what that means? That means it's not RSI. Do you see a histogram here? No, it's probably not MACD. What's left? Stochastics 833. In fact, for most professional traders, they prefer the stochastics over the MACD. Not most, but many. And in the example I gave you, did anybody think to look and say, well, what is that? What is that being used? It doesn't look like a MACD to me. See, you have the answers right here in front of you. You're just not being MacGyver enough. You're not being an explorer enough. You're not taking it as, I've got to figure this out myself or I'm going to die. It's just too easy to complain, get frustrated, and wait for somebody else to answer it for you. Exhaust yourself trying to find the answer, then seek help. Because then you'll get really good help. The people offering help want it to go to the people who really need it. The people who really need it are the ones who are trying to make it happen. So you already had the answer to your question. If you can't figure out what divergence looks like on the chart, what to measure on the chart, well, hell, go to your RSI 14. There's only one plot. It's easy to figure out there. If you don't like MACD, throw stochastics on your chart and use it instead. So the questions coming on top of the training just say you're not there yet. You're not fulfilling the attributes that it takes to be a successful trader. Now, all that being said, if it sounds like I'm being harsh and Mr. Negative and all that, I'm not. I'm trying to open your eyes. I'm trying to open your eyes. Because it doesn't get easier from here, guys. It doesn't get harder, but it gets more sophisticated. And if you don't start developing the skills to help you grow, you're not going to grow. So if I sound harsh, I apologize. I'm trying to help. My desire, my love is for you to become a very successful trader. And to me, success is defined in the trading world by consistently profitable. Achieving the financial goals you really, that are within expectations in terms of reality. Achieving the financial goals that you want. That's what I want. All right, all that being said, let's take a look at everything, just so you can see this. So I know it's quite scrunched up, but I still make it work. So we have a 15-minute plot. The first channel, we have TradingView with the default 31016. When I say default, I mean the histogram is the histogram, the plots are the plots. It plots 3 out of 3 things. It asks you for 3 things, it plots 3 things. And that's what it looks like. Here's the TradingView, and I've made it look like the MT4. I've switched around what is the histogram. I took away the one plot. I only draw the signal line that they draw. And you'll notice I'm saying things. Well, gee, their signal line matches the TradingView signal line. Their histogram essentially matches the TradingView histogram. It's just it has more amplitude in each direction. It doesn't mean it's going to show divergence and TradingView won't, or TradingView will show it and MT4 won't. MT4 just does it with more amplitude in the histogram. Here's a standard RSI 14 single plot, and here's TradingView stochastics with an 833 parameter setting. And what you'll notice up here in price, if I move away my drawing tool, if you'll notice up here in price, from one pretty high swing to the next high swing, price has moved up. What's happened in the TradingView, if you measure the histogram, it's gone down. If you measure the peak of the moving average plot, it's gone down. It's divergent. What about with MT4? It's just a bigger amplitude of the histogram. It's gone down. It's divergent. What about in RSI? Here it was way up here, almost, pushing, well, it's over 80. And guess what? Well, 70, 80, whatever. Doesn't matter. Look at where it comes down here for this high. It's come down. It's divergent. What about stochastics? Way up here, way down here. It's divergent. So it doesn't, see, divergence is divergence, guys. It doesn't matter what indicator you're using. And even the terms of trading view, it doesn't matter whether you're following the histogram or you're following the moving averages compared to, you know, MT4 where you've got these, excuse me, big bloated histograms. JED uses RSI. Obviously it works. A lot of professional traders use stochastics and an 833. Divergence is divergence. So a lot of you are just, getting all discombobulated over nothing. If the divergence doesn't look like it's there in one indicator, you could always take a second look. You already have, if you do the setup the way suggested, you will have the trading view default and you will have RSI. And if you don't see divergence in trading view because the MACD is so, these histograms are too shallow and you really can't see the amplitude in them to get a good sense of the divergence, drop down to RSI. If you see it there, that qualifies. But most of the time, they're all going to read the same because divergence is divergence. So I'll end there. So 2 subjects tonight. 1, here's the answer to the question. What are you using? How does it look? What am I really trading with divergence? And as big, if not bigger, or as an equal part of the presentation, if not bigger, is the head game stuff. Be MacGyver. Be an entrepreneur. Get the mindset of you have to figure it yourself, or you're MacGyver and the bomb is going to blow up. It's up to you. Who was it? Is it Zig Ziglar? I think way back when, or maybe it goes back to Carnegie or one of those guys. It's an older self-development guy, but the saying was simple. If it's to be, it's up to me. And if you don't adopt that as your attitude, as your mindset, as your strategy as a trader, you're not going to make it as a trader. I'm sorry. Hate to tell you that. Trading the Forex, oh my gosh, it's an incredible opportunity. There's nothing else like it. There's nowhere else with a simple internet connection and a laptop or even a cell phone for some of you guys who are trying to go that route. As long as you have an internet connection and a technological device, you can trade. You don't have thousands of dollars of overhead. You don't have employees or inventory, shipping problems, warehousing, none of that stuff. It's the most incredible opportunity. All it takes is some patience and persistence, and you'll get there. It's not an overnight riches game. And if you want to accelerate it, go back to that first page of attributes. It talks about having a sense of urgency, having some momentum going your way. You can accelerate that faster. Not at the detriment to your head game, but you can accelerate it. And so it's just methodically going through it. But grow yourself. Quit putting so much emphasis on the technical. Remember, the head game is there. And if you work on those attributes, hey, guess what? You can go to that list. Here's what I would do as a strategy if I were a newer trader. I'd go to that list of attributes that somebody's been coaching for 14 years, says these are the attributes I note in successful traders. And say, that's Tony Robbins saying success leaves its patterns. I would look at that list and see where I'm the weakest. And then I would focus my self-development on those areas. Gee, I have a terrible problem with patience. Let me go see the top 100 books on patience. You got a search engine on that laptop or the cell phone. Go look it up. Invest in yourself. Buy the books. Buy the videos. Go to YouTube. Best teachers of patience. You'll have 1,000 hits. Don't talk to me about there being, a lack of abundance and opportunity to grow yourself. It's just a commitment and a belief that you have to. I'm done. I hope you guys have a great weekend.